Good evening, crafting friends. I'm Doreen DeSavis from It Begins with Ink and Paper, and welcome to Simply Stamping Sunday. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, whether you're joining me on the live here on Facebook or on the replay on Facebook or, of course, on my YouTube channel. I appreciate you checking in. So I'm going to start tonight with just a little show and tell. It's only 4 cards, but I attended a bingo session yesterday, which was so much fun. And these were the cards we made during the bingo session. So first, this is a card that I received from demonstrator Wendy Lee using the, not the Gathering Moments, using the Label Me Grateful stamp set and the 3D sunflower embossing folder. So that was her card. This was the first card I made using the embossing folder, turning it over on the deboss side, and using my pecan pie ink pad to swipe over it to add some really beautiful shades of pecan pie. So pretty. This was the second card we made. Again, using the Label Me Grateful set and the embossing folder. And I swiped on the emboss side my white ink pad over this one. Just makes it so pretty. And I have a sunflower handmade by Doreen DeSavis stamp. So I stamped that one on the back. One of my students this week gave me a beautiful spider plant, and I want to have a beautiful card to thank her with, so that's what I'm going to use. And then finally we did one, I used my sponge daubers to ink up on the emboss side, and again this is from the Nestled Essentials dies, but using the 3D embossing folder and the stamp from the Grateful for You stamp set. So that's my little bit of show and tell for you tonight. I have had such a busy day. I have so much schoolwork to do, and I can't believe we only just finished our first full week, and I'm already having to do so much work. But I was planning 2 new units today, which I love, but I still have correcting to do too. It's going to be a late night tonight. Well, we are on week 2 of our Gathering Moments stamp set. I am really enjoying this stamp set, so I hope you are too. Last week we made a one-sheet wonder, so let me just move this out of the way so I can review the cards that we did last week. So we used some of the different, I used crumb cake, early espresso, pecan pie, darling duckling, Cajun Craze, old olive. So let me just get the vertical cards first. So these were some of the cards that we made in that beautiful one-sheet wonder. And then we had a couple of cards that went in the vertical direction. So that was last week. All we did was stamp. We didn't use any designer series paper. This week we are going to add designer series paper. The designer series paper for this set is just gorgeous. And I forgot to put it out so I could show it to you tonight. I'll show it to you next week because we're going to use the designer series paper again. But we're using the Gathering Moments stamp set, and I'm going to be using the Thank You for 1 card in the Label Me Grateful set, which that's a great set too. So let's get started with our first card. So tonight I'm going to be adding the addition of the designer series paper, and we'll do a little stamping with each card, but I want the designer series paper to be the star of the show tonight. On this card I'm using 1, 2, 3 different designs of the designer series paper. So to start with, I have here a piece of thick basic white cardstock that measures 5.5 by 8.5, and I'm just going to burnish that. So there we go. This is the first design of the designer series paper I'm using. It measures 4 by 5.25. It is Early Espresso, and it has little circles all through the pattern. On the back side, it's a beautiful plaid with gold, basic beige, and crushed curry. So we're going to be placing that on the front of the cardstock. So let's just add that to the front. There we go. And then I have a piece of cardstock, designer series paper that measures 2 by 5.25, and it has a Cajun Craze design with some boughs of leaves on it. And on the other side, we have these beautiful fall images with a touch of gold all throughout. But we're going to, on this part, use the Cajun Craze side. And I'm just going to put this over with just like that. Then I have another piece of that brown paper, and that measures, 3 7/8 by 2 3/8. And then I have a piece of this side of the designer series paper with the beautiful fall images and some gold all within it. This one measures 2 3/4 by 2 3/4, and we're going to just mount that right on top of it. Like I said, I just want to really highlight the designer series paper tonight. Hi Bonnie, thanks for joining. And I'm just going to mount this right on top of that, and then I'm just going to add some adhesive and put this on the front of the card. So I'm just trying to center it the best I wanted over those pieces. So there we go, and now we can do some stamping. So I have here a scrap of basic white cardstock that is 1 inch in width. I'm going to be cutting it down, and I'm going to stamp the mini thanks in Early Espresso ink. So I'm just going to ink that up, and I'm going to stamp it towards one side. There we go. Perfect. Close this ink pad up. And then what I'm going to do, just so that I'm going to be straight, I'm going to grab my paper cutter, because if not, I will not cut this straight. There we go. And then I'm going to take a 3/4 inch piece of Early Espresso. It's just a scrap. And I'm going to add some adhesive to the back side of it. And I'm going to mount this, centering it on both ends. And then I am going to trim that. And I'm not going to use a paper cutter. I'm going to take a chance there. And that looks pretty good. Get that out of the way. Now I'm just going to add some dimensionals to the back of this. And this very first simple card is just about done. And I don't think I didn't do anything on the inside because I wanted to have room to stamp, to write my greeting. And I'm just going to off-center that. I want to make sure the Early Espresso is over the Cajun Craze so you can see that. And that is our first card. Hi Lynn, thanks for joining. Okay, let's go on to card number 2. So this card is going to use a piece of 8.5 by 5.5 early espresso. I'm going to be adding, and this one's a little smaller. It's a 3 3/4 inch by 5 inch piece of basic beige. Then I have a piece of 4 by 5 1/4 Cajun Craze. I have a piece of the designer series paper. This one, the last one, had a white background. This has a basic beige background, and when you turn it over, it's a basic beige pattern. And this one measures 3 inches by 3 3/4 inches. This is what my card looks like. And I have a scrap piece that I'm going to do some stamping on. My piece of basic beige for the top measures 3 3/4 by 1 3/4. And then I have a 1/2 inch strip that is 3 3/4 inch long that I'm going to use on the inside. And I've already pre-cut my leaves. So let's get started. So I'll start with the stamping. I'm going to use the Cajun Craze. Hi, Roz. And I'm going to take the smaller leaf stamp, and I'm just going to stamp it twice because I'm going to be hand cutting it out. I didn't cheat this week because I didn't have to cut out 56 pieces. So I hand cut everything like I should for Simply Stamping Sunday. So there are my 2 leaf finishes. I'm going to set them aside because, as I showed you, I've already cut them out so that we don't have to watch that tonight. I do have more stamping to do, but I'm going to do that in just a second. I'm going to get my piece ready for the inside of my card. Just move that stamp out of the way and grab my adhesive. And I'm just going to add some adhesive to this bottom strip. And it's going to go along the bottom of my piece of basic beige that is going to go inside the card. So there we have it. So I'm going to fold this piece. This is another real easy card. And I'm going to burnish the edge with my bone folder. And I'm going to add some adhesive to this piece, and I'm going to add it to the inside of the card. Since it is a little smaller, it's going to have a larger border around the edge here. Okay, so next, I'm going to get this piece ready. So this piece here is going to go towards the bottom of this. And I'm just going to add my adhesive so I can add it to it. This is just a nice way to showcase your designer series paper when you're doing some Simply stamping. And then I'm going to take my smaller piece and I'm going to do my stamping on it. And let's see, I thought I had all my stamps out. What did I do with it? Well, let's look in the box first because that's probably where it is. Well, we're going to use a different stamp because I don't know what I did with that. I had this all set up last night, actually, because I knew I had so much schoolwork to do, but this one is going to work just fine. So let me just get a block, and we'll add this on. So I like putting my stamps when they're the cling on, so I'm looking at making sure that the greeting is even, and sometimes I'll even take a scrap piece of paper just grab one. I'll use this. It's actually my tree journal paper for my students tomorrow, but it didn't print the way I wanted it to. So I'm going to add I'm going to stamp this in my early espresso, and I'm going to stamp it all the way over to the right. There we go. Let's close this ink pad. Just want it to take off. All right, so now what I'm going to do is attach this to the front of the card. Like that. I could have made it a little longer if I didn't want, but I don't mind having the bigger bit of Cajun Craze there. So now I'm going to add my leaves. I am putting one down with just Stampin' Seal, and the other one I am going to attach with dimensionals just to give it a little bit of, just a little bit of height. So that will go like that. So this is what this panel looks like. And now I'm just going to add some adhesive so I can add this to the front of my card, and card number 2 will be done. So I really like about Simply Stamping Sunday, you can make cards very quick and easy. So that is card number 2. And you can see it looks fine, doesn't matter what sentiment you use on that. Okay, let me set that aside. And let's go to our third card of the evening. I have a piece of Cajun Craze cardstock, which measures 5.5 by 8.5. I have a piece of basic white cardstock that measures 4 by 5.25. Let me get all of my little pieces out here. I have a piece of early espresso cardstock, and it measures 4.25 by 3.25. I have a piece of designer series paper. This is a different one that I used earlier. It has the early espresso, the Cajun Craze, and the basic beige in it with that gold. And then it has a basic beige kind of check pattern on the back. And that one measures 4 1/8 by 3 1/8. I have a piece, just a scrap of basic white that I'm going to be stamping on. I have a 1/4 inch scrap from my Cajun Craze. And I have a 3/4 inch by 4 1/8 piece of basic white, and then I have a 1/2 inch strip of the designer series paper. All right, so this is what our card looks like. So pretty. I think out of tonight's cards, this one's my favorite. So let me show you how I made it. Let me just set that aside. So the first thing that I'm going to do is burnish my edge on my card front. And I'm going to take that sheet again, because this time I'm going to be taking the larger stamp. And when I put this on, there's a lot of plain cardstock there, and I don't really like having a lot of plain cardstock showing. So I'm going to use the Cajun Craze ink, And I am going to take the large leaf first, and I'm just going to go around the outside edge, turning my stamp in different directions as I go. I don't need to go in very far because this stamp is a larger stamp. Okay, there we go for that. And I need to clean this stamp because I'm going to be using it in Early Espresso ink, and I don't want to get Cajun Craze in my Early Espresso. Okay, so that's ready to go for when I need it next. Now what I'm going to do is take the little splatter stamp, and I'm just going to fill in any space that was left empty as I went around and stamped. And that's what that looks like. I actually think I'm going to just add one more splatter. There we go. All right. So now we can start putting the front together. So I'm going to start by putting my Designer Series paper on top of my piece of Early Espresso. There we go. I am going to take my piece of Designer Series paper, and I'm going to actually be going right across this way, but then I'm going to turn my paper for the inside of the card. So I usually put my paper on the bottom, but this time I'm going to be putting this strip along the side. So I'm going to put that on. It was just a little longer, so I can just snip off those sides, and then I'll add my adhesive and put this on the inside of the card, just like that. So instead of having it along the bottom, I have it along the side. All right, let's finish up with this side. Next, I'm going to take this piece, and I'm going to use the thank you using the Cajun Craze ink, and I'm going to stamp it on the left-hand side. I could stamp it on the right if I want. I just wanted to do something a little different. I usually put my greetings more to the right. So I'm going to add that to this piece, like that. Let's close that up. And I'm going to be putting this right along the bottom of this piece. And I'm not leaving an edge. I'm going to put it right to the bottom of the Designer Series paper. So I don't want any of that showing. There we go. Now that as a label looks really good, but let's just add another piece to it. We're just going to add a few things to make it really stand out. So I'm just going to grab some glue. Because this is just such a little, it's only 1/4 of an inch wide, I want to use the liquid glue, and I'm just going to put a few dots right along this, because I'm going to want this to be able to move a little bit as I put it down on my paper. So this is going to go right up against that white, right on top of the designer series paper and right on top of that. Isn't that pretty? Again, this looks great just by itself, but I am going to add some leaves. So what I'm going to do on here is I am going to stamp the larger leaf in Early Espresso. And I am going to stamp the smaller leaf in Cajun Craze. And through the magic of television, I have already cut them out. So I'll put those aside. And I am going to glue those together like that to make just a little bit of a spray before I put it on my card. So that it looks like that. And then I'm going to use dimensionals on the back of it to raise this as well. There we go. And then I'm going to put that right like that. So this is what our finished front of the card looks like. I just love this. I love this paper. It's just so gorgeous. And so I'm going to then add some dimensionals. And we'll put this on the front of the card and we will be all set with our third card. I really like how this card came out. Well, not quite even. See if I can get these back off. And that is a little better. And there we have our third card of the evening. So let's just review the cards that we made tonight. So this was our first card that we made, using the designer series paper that has the old olive, the crushed curry, the Cajun Craze, and the Early Espresso in it, along with that beautiful gold. And then the second card, we used the one that had the basic beige background and used it with an Early Espresso base and some Cajun Craze. And then our final card we made with Cajun Craze. We used a piece that had the white background, but it has the Cajun Craze, the Early Espresso, and the basic beige, along with that gold. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope you'll be back with me Friday night for Fun Fold Friday. We're going to do a brand new fold again this week. And of course, I'll be back for week number 3 for Simply Stamping Sunday. And next week, we're going to really pull it all together and have lots of stamping and lots of the beautiful designer series paper. So I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you Friday night. Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.